in
Hope
case
you
we
don't mind.
say,
I'm in my pajamas and my hair's a mess.
no problem. Yeah, just in case we say anything interesting. Um, hey, it's very nice to meet you. Very
It's
nice
nice
to
to
meet
meet you too.
you. I was just browsing online looking for other Black people who are in this space and doing this thing, and ran across you and listened to your. I don't know if it's like an intro video, but you started doing some YouTube things, and so I just listened to your the one where you talk about carnivore,
Hmm.
and thought it was interesting and thought it'd be great for us to connect. And like I said in the in my DM, I'm really trying to find people who are really passionate and getting results and have made this transition to kind of see if we can put together something virtually or come together and really kind of talk to the Black community about
Hmm.
because I think our community is one of the hardest hit by metabolic syndrome and things like that. So
Hmm.
it'd
Yeah.
be good to come together and talk about that. So tell me first, I guess let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why get out of here, fly. Why I am keto. So my name's Daniel, and I went keto in 2017. I call July 4th, 2017, my Independence Day, because that's the day that I actually started doing something different in terms of my nutrition. It wasn't keto at first. I just did intermittent fasting
Hmm.
because my son walked across the kitchen one day. He was 15 at 14, 15 at the time. And so he had abs, and I was like, "Dang, I used to have those." Used to have those, and they started to disappear. And I'm working out all the time in the gym, and that's the one thing that just wasn't coming back after 40 something. So did a little bit of research, found intermittent fasting, and I heard about keto. Thought keto was crazy. It's like, who eats fat to lose fat? That doesn't make any sense. Of course, we all go through that in the beginning. And so I started intermittent fasting. That was the first day. We were in San Diego on vacation. We were on this museum, which is basically a battleship over there. And I drank my first cup of black coffee. Right. So, coffee, most people have coffee with their sugar and their cream with a little bit of honey. You know, so I never drank coffee before, and doing the research, it was like to get through intermittent fasting in the morning, to drink a black coffee or drink sparkling water. Neither one of those did I like. Hated both of them, but I was determined, and so I drank that first cup of black coffee, took it down, and been drinking coffee ever since. So it wasn't. It was pretty bad the first time, but after that, it got better and better and better, and now I love black coffee. And then 3 months into it, when you're doing intermittent fasting, the crosstalk happens
Hmm.
with keto communities and eventually carnivore communities. So ran up on keto, ran up on this site, Facebook group that was doing both keto and intermittent fasting. So I read a bunch of the comments and posts, and it was a way to double down. So I was like, yeah, let's get it done. Let's do it. And 3 months into it, the abs came back, and it wasn't because of working out. Right? It was I've been working out before, but just the change in the eating and the fasting, and the fat just left it, melted. So, and then I added heavy weight lifting after that, just for body recomposition. So, been going strong ever since on keto, and sort of carnivore-ish. Not really carnivore, but I'd say about 70 to 80% of my diet is meat, mostly beef, and a lot of it ground beef. But yeah, so that's kind of where I am, why I'm. Oh, so well, let me give you this one, right? So I started, and you'll relate to this because I've seen some of your videos. So started it for the vain reasons of, hey, I'm trying to get my body back. And then 6 months into it, sinusitis went away, asthma almost disappeared, joint pain from the Medicaid, because when you have asthma, when you deal with asthma and you take the meds, the steroids start to work on your joints and things like that. And so those get weak and couldn't even kneel on, like, so kneeling down, getting on my knees would hurt, right? And 6 months into this, all that disappeared. And so I came over for vanity, and then I stayed because of the health benefits, So, so that's me. And I'm out here in Arizona, wife and 3 kids. We've been here 20 since 1993. Actually 1997. I've been going back and forth between here and Louisiana since 93, though. So about 25-ish years been out here. So tell me about you.
Well, I'm really glad you reached out. I think it's really cool. Like you, I would like this message to get out to the Black community. And, so many of my family and friends I know would benefit from eating this way. And, I can barely get them to go low carb, forget about carnivore. But I think that it's really meaningful and really important to me. And I have benefited so much. So, I figure all I can do is, put my story out there and hopefully serve as a lightning rod to pull more people towards me until we can build a movement. But, I started with low carb. Probably the first time I did it was back in the late 90s, when the last Atkins book came out. Yeah, that was like the late 90s. And at the time I was living in LA and everybody was doing it. But at the same time, LA, is very much like all healthy and, natural and all of that. So it was kind of like, do Atkins, but don't eat meat. And it was very schizophrenic time. Eventually I moved away and I kind of got away from doing that. And then when I came back I lived in Amsterdam for a couple of years. And when I came back to New York, I went to like an all natural doctor who, was also an MD. And I went, kind of to deal with like my allergies, but he, took a look at, took tests and did stuff like that. And he came back and I thought he was going to say to me, you gotta, you got to go eat vegan and stop eating meat and, eat all of this, grains and rice and stuff. And he came back and was like, you've got to do the cave woman diet. You can eat nothing but meat and vegetables. You're like allergic to everything. And I thought that was really interesting because normally, you just wouldn't expect that of people. So, at the time I did that, and this was right before paleo really took off. So, I mean, I was essentially eating paleo. And he didn't say like, don't eat like rice or oats or anything like that. He just said, don't eat anything that comes in a bag or a box. So, that all that leaves you is meat and vegetables. And then from there, I was like, oh yeah, well, I did low carb. I know what that is. So I'll keep doing that. And so I did that for a long time. And, I was dirty and sloppy about it. So I'd go out drinking with friends and, I'd eat wings, buffalo wings and stuff like that. So my weight more or less stayed, higher than I wanted it to be, but, it was more or less stable. My allergies and stuff like that was not great. But it, I assumed that this was the best it would be. And then, I finally decided to buckle down and lose weight because I had a job that was really difficult. It was very stressful. And, basically I ate to deal with that. And I gained about 80 pounds. And, nowadays I counsel people on weight loss. And so a lot of people are always, saying to me, oh, I did really bad this week. I ate all this, I was very stressed. This is happening, that is happening. And now I'm very harsh with people. And I'm like, look, your job is quick to fire you. They don't care about you or anything that happens to you. So why give your life and, eat over it? Like all you're doing is handing years of your life to a job that will fire you in a second. So don't do that, and to myself, I say the same thing. I'm never going to, let stress really drive my eating because it's not worth it. It's too high a price. But ultimately, I decided to buckle down and deal with the weight. And to do that, I decided to go on a keto diet because I had been, well, at the time it was still being called low carb. So I decided to go on a low carb diet because I had done that before pretty successfully. And, and this time I really buckled down, and I decided to study more about it because I found it really interesting. And, in years ago, when I first was in school, I was getting a PhD in anthropology. So I'd always been interested in like human evolution and how our bodies evolved, and what our subsistence patterns were in the past and all of that. So I always found this really interesting. So I decided to study more on it, and so I kind of entered the space, I would say, in 2015, and began in earnest, really like listening to a lot of the presentations online from who's it, Eric Westman, Dr. Eads, and Dr. Finney and Dr. Folick, and then Jimmy Moore came out with this book, Dr. Fung, and Andreas Einfeld. And so it kind of went from there. And I really did like try to dive in on the science, because I had always been interested in health. I mean, even since like the 90s, so I was always the person that was like, oh, kale is a new superfood, let's eat it, and so I was an early adopter of any of these things. So as I started to study this, I really began to dive in and try to understand it. And so I was ahead of the curve. That at the time everyone was like, people were talking about paleo, but they're like, no fruit, what? You're crazy. So
we'll talk about that one because
yeah.
Okay.
So it took me a long time, though, to really wrap my head around this idea of not eating vegetables. And I think back in like 2006, I had run across Charles Washington, who was that black guy who was doing Carnivore. And he had started an online community, I think called Zeroing In on Health, or Zero Carb Zen. And so I had been part of the forums then, and I was curious by the idea, but I just could not wrap my head around it. Mm-hmm. So I kind of participated in conversations, and I wasn't doing it, and read a lot, and then kind of, moved away from it. But over the years, I would hear Amber O'Hearn talk about it, and she, has been doing Carnivore, and I think she was part of that community with him.
I didn't know. I remember the website because I was browsing it and just reading some of them, because some of the folks that were on it are raw meats, right? And that's all they can eat. They're allergic to everything, but when they eat raw meat, it works out. My mind was totally blown when I read that. Could not believe it. If I hadn't seen like 10, 20 posts about it, I wouldn't have believed it, right? But yeah, I didn't know a black guy started this. Right?
Yeah. Well, so I remember his story was like he had done low carb and it worked well, but then it didn't work. And then he discovered, but in his process of losing weight, he discovered some kind of lump that turned out to be cancerous. And then he was able to have it removed, and his life was kind of saved by having lost this weight. But then I don't even remember the rest of the story, but there was some involved story, and somehow he ended up with Carnivore. And so he decided to start this community because this way of life had saved him. Of course, this way of eating is not new, but him building that community.
Yeah.
And that was really the only reason, because he was black, that I was like, hey, what is this now? But Amber O'Hearn has been very outspoken over the years and talked about how this way of eating resolved her bipolar disorder, which, is huge. And so she's now no longer on medication, and her mood is completely stable. But I've heard her speak over the years, and, was kind of interested, but never really did anything with it. And then finally in 2017, I had reached my goal weight, and then gone on to run for public office. I didn't win, but it was, a very very involved and exhausting process. And after the election, I was trying to lose a little more weight, and I came across something called the beef and butter fast, where you eat ground beef and like, tablespoons of butter for 3 days, and you try to lose a little weight. And on day 2, I was just like, oh my God, this is so incredible. I can't stop eating this way. And I just was like, I'm just going to keep eating this way. I mean, I think partly I had a couple of things going on. One, I was super, super anemic. And then 2, my asthma had gotten out of control at that point. So I wasn't breathing very well. And so, eating that way, 1, upped my ketones, and 2, it helped with the anemia. And so all of a sudden I was feeling like a lot better.
So you're saying, so you were already low carb, but
Mhm.
that didn't allow you to bring the asthma under control.
No.
Now, were you
So it
keto
was
or
taking
just low carb?
I was keto. I mean, because I would use the P strips and I would check, so I could see that I was in ketosis.
Okay.
And that's how I define keto, not by the macros, but
Sure.
whether I'm in
Sure.
ketosis or not. And
Absolutely.
then and then the level of ketosis. So I notice that I don't get high levels of ketosis unless my fat is really high.
Yeah.
So on carnivore, I might have blood glucose around 95, and then I know that I'm eating too much protein and I got to inch it down a little. But yeah, dairy has been the key for me. Now, I have gone in the times in my past where I was not eating dairy, but I was, eating high carb. And I think I've got to have both in order to resolve the asthma. I
Mm.
can't eat carbs, but not eat dairy and be okay. So,
Have you studied any of, because I've been looking for just a link to whatever's in the carbs, and I've just started to play around with no dairy because mostly just on keto, my asthma issues have been resolved. And because I used to carry around an inhaler, I couldn't be without it. I would rush home many times to get to the nebulizer. And when stress was really, really high, I'd end up in the ER to get a shot, something like that. In the last 2.5 years, the most that I've had to deal with is, a few puffs a year on an inhaler. And so I've been looking, just kind of browsing through the science to see, or the literature to see, what those links are. One thing I think is that low levels of zinc contribute to asthma issues. And we know that, meat has the higher levels of the metals and the zinc. But have you looked into any of that? And what have you found, if so?
well, I've been interested in the paleo medicina, that clinic in Hungary. They're the ones who are doing a lot of research on the carnivore diet and treating people. And so they say that they have research, and they've actually have a way of testing intestinal permeability, and that dairy compromises the intestinal permeability for everybody. So they absolutely preclude using dairy at all, and even small amounts of it. Like there's no amount that's okay to use. And so I think for me, I have an issue with allergies, and the way it expresses in me is, initially in my life, it began with eczema, then allergies, then asthma. So all those things rolled out sort of consecutively. And so I, for years with, as far as like allergies, I took Benadryl. I always walked around with Sudafed. I used Flonase every day. It was years before I realized that
Fascinating.
Flonase was a steroid.
So I got an interesting story on the Flonase, right? So I went to the doctor because I was really flaring up when I hit my 40s. It just was starting to get worse and worse and worse. And I went to the doc. The doc was like, "Well, you're gonna have to manage this, right?" And so to manage this, because you have sinus issues, and anytime your sinus flares up, it causes asthma to flare up. And so here's what I want you to do. I'm gonna put you on Flonase. At that time, it was prescription. So I'll put you on Flonase to control the sinus drippage and things like that. And then I'll give you the inhaler and the albuterol to go on the nebulizer. So if you need to, you can do that. So I managed to like that for years. And but every single year I would get a urinary tract infection. I had no idea why. And I was going to I told the doctor about it. They would send me to a urinary doctor and they wanted to do some type of surgery. And I was like, no, I'm not. I've had surgery before because I had a tumor on my spine when I was younger to have it removed. And I was like, I'm not going through surgery again. And thank God I didn't do that because what was causing the urinary tract was Flonase. So a few weeks into Flonase, I always have that. And urinary tract infections, I don't know if you ever had one, but it's worse than the flu. I mean, seriously, it is horrible. And so I basically said to myself, if this is what I'm going to have to go through to, heal those sinuses or to not have sinus issues, I'm just going to have sinus problems. That's just going to have to be my life.
Wow.
But what happened is the day or around the time I decided I was just going to not do Flonase and I had figured that piece out, I started keto. And 6 months into doing that, I realized I didn't need the sinus meds anymore. And I haven't needed sinus meds for 2.5 years. I've never in my life up until I was 43, which is when I started doing this, never been able to breathe out of both nostrils. Ever. One was always clogged up or both were clogged up. And when I hit 43 and I started doing this, and 6 months into this, I was no longer a mouth breather. I could go to sleep with my mouth closed and breathe out of my nostrils.
Yeah.
And if you've never dealt with this problem, you probably don't appreciate it. But
no, I do.
Yeah,
I do. I mean, I did a couple of things that I think all contributed. One, I stopped drinking alcohol, and that was a big part of the problem. That really resolved some of the snoring and stuff like that. And then, taking out the dairy was a big thing. So I had heard those people at the Paleo Medicinal Clinic say, don't eat dairy, and we show this, and we can see, like, in our tests, like, people, every time they have dairy, their intestinal permeability goes up. And, and their contention is that this is what causes allergies. When your intestines are permeable, then big pieces of proteins of the things that you eat can get into your bloodstream, that your body sees this as a problem and then reacts to it. And this is what an allergy is. And so in a person, that can be expressed in a lot of ways. For some people, I guess it depends on wherever you just happen to be weak. So for some people that might be asthma, for some people that might be ulcerative colitis, for some people that might be skin problems, for some people, it might be, various kinds of autoimmune things, fibromyalgia, there are the brain problems as well, which they say are autoimmune in their origin. So autoimmunity has been cited as the cause of a lot of different disease. So
wow. So you're saying that, and I'll have to go take a look at this because it's really interesting. You're saying that they're saying with any type of dairy, any amount, it opens your gut up, or it makes your gut penetrable by the things that you eat, which it shouldn't be. And that can show up in different chronic inflammation or autoimmune issues.
Well, it gets into your bloodstream, and then your body sees these things as foreign invaders and reacts to them. And so then every time you eat that food, it reacts to it, whether it's, whether it's an innocuous substance or not, it's now reacting to it.
Mm. And do they talk about beyond dairy, like any other vegetables, like corn? Because
so beyond that, I mean, things like antibiotics will create that permeability. If you were not C-section versus vaginal birth, all of these things contribute to building our immune system. And once your immune system is activated or learns things, it never unlearns it. So if you were born and, not breastfed, but on formula, you're going to have stuff that just is always will be part of your footprint. So it could be, who knows what happened, what antibiotic you took when you were 6. Like my mom just, maybe a month ago told me, oh yeah, I used to have ear infections all the time. Like you had like 12 before you were 6 years old. And I'm like, this is like actually huge information that has an unbelievable consequence on me today, to know that by age 6 I had taken antibiotics countless times. So I don't know, I'm like my gut is probably all, and this is the way it's showing in me. Other people have ulcerative colitis or some other thing. This is just happens to be what I have. So the dairy makes it worse. I don't know, whether it can be cured. This is what their research is trying to figure out whether these things can be cured, how you resolve them. And, right now we're in, really the formative stages of research on the carnivore diet. There in the last 100 years, periodically, there'll be somebody who writes a book on it and recommends it. But this is the first time there's really been this level of research on what's actually happening and why there is this benefit. So, over the next 10, 20 years, we may learn, an exceptional amount of information about why this is happening. But this clinic is kind of the first one. And this is what they found about dairy. So I never kicked the dairy and carbs at the same time. I know that I am allergic to soy and corn, and I was tested like that. That doctor who told me to not eat anything out of a bag or or a box. He told me that I was allergic to soy and corn, and then. So I think that I'm already reacting to that. And so the dairy on top of it, like I couldn't see, what benefits I might have gained by stop eating the dairy, because I'm still dealing with the soy and corn. And soy and corn is frankly in everything. So I did my best to get it out, but I knew I wasn't getting it all. And so it wasn't until I went carnivore that I really mostly got it out. But that's still, the fact is, like every pill you take has got cornstarch in it or some kind of soy in it. I stopped using like cornstarch powder, but there's like soy and corn is literally in everything. So even eating eggs, these animals are fed soy and corn. And for people who are who have allergies to eggs, to soy and corn, they can react to eggs. So that stuff, whatever's in it, is still getting into the egg.
Yeah,
So,
a friend of mine online, Rhonda's Cooking, she wrote a cookbook a while back because she was allergic to, or she is allergic to eggs, soy, corn, all of those things, and can't even eat. So if the meat was fed with any of that, right, it reacts. She reacts to it. So she has to make sure that the meat that she's eating is from grass-fed farms and things like that. So very, very much true on that one.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I found that, so once I actually decided to go ahead and try the dairy, I went for probably about a week. I mean, it really wasn't even that long. And I went for about a week, and then I was like, wow, I haven't had to use my inhaler and I can really breathe. And then I was like, well, let me test this, because this is crazy. Like a little bit of cheese can't be that big a deal. And I had just bought a bunch of cheese, so I didn't want this to be true.
Yes.
And then I ate some cheese, and then within 3 hours I had to get my inhaler.
Wow,
great. Yeah. And then I went for a couple more days, and then I had some cheese, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought I have to get my inhaler. I mean, it was like bad enough. I couldn't breathe bad enough that it would wake me up. And so I was like, all right, I have so many puffs left on my inhaler. So let me finish this cheese. And then I will stop. And so I did that. And then I decided, me and cheese, we had a good run, but this is it. It's over. I'm never having any again. So.
So here's a question that I've been noodling on. Because when I went keto, I know, so I'm cutting everything out, a lot of things out, just by keeping those carbs low, right? So a lot of the rice, the breads, the grains, the high glycemic fruits and things like that, all of that's gone. Do you think that doing that, and I'm committed to keto regardless, but do you think doing that causes any type of food sensitivities that maybe you didn't have in the past? It's like trying to go back, maybe now, you've created food sensitivities because you've narrowed your food scope so much.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. I hear people say that, and I kind of don't really understand why they say that. I think, if anything, I feel so much better that I notice when I eat something that makes me feel less better. So, for me, like changing the way that I've eaten has cleared the path so that I can see when something doesn't agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, for me, I feel so much better that I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'll eat a cookie again. Yeah, I'll eat chocolate again. But it's a choice, and I know how much I pay for doing it. And I know that I have never felt better than while on carnivore.
Okay.
So I can choose to eat differently, but why would you choose to be less well?
I agree with that, in that I think about my 43 years eating the standard American diet and how much I've had to deal with, and how much medicine I've had to take, how many times I was in the ER, uh, almost died one time from asthma. So, and then I think about, well, just not eating those things and feeling so much better. I'm like, I don't have to eat those things. I don't have to eat corn. I don't have to eat, soy or any of that, and can live for another whatever number of years without that. So, but the science is still evolving, or still being still coming forth, really, to kind of, for us to sink our teeth into as it
Yeah.
comes. But yeah,
But
I
I
agree
think
with
the
you.
thing with allergies is a really big deal that we probably don't put enough focus on. And, after that doctor told me I was allergic to soy and corn, like maybe a year ago, again, my mom really telling me stuff that she should have told me ages ago. But I was talking about how I was allergic to soy, and she said, "Oh yeah, when you were born, the doctors told me that, in the hospital." And I was like, why would you not pay attention to this all these years, giving me tofu, like having me eat soy, and you never said anything? And like, for doctors in 1971, I mean, they didn't believe in allergies back then. So for them to tell her your baby is allergic to soy, like, I must have had a serious reaction in the
But
hospital.
to your mother's defense, they just well, I mean, I know I know I'm allergic to certain things, and I'm pretty much. It was like I got a one of those allergy tests where they prick you or they cut you and then they put stuff in it. And I'm not allergic, according to that test, I'm not allergic to anything. But I could not mow a yard without being laid up for 3 or 4 days, right after. So the pollen, the dust, the dander, all those things, just I react to it big time. But in terms of food that I eat, they say I'm not allergic, to anything. But it wasn't until I changed my diet that I wasn't reacting to the pollen and all of those things. So, so to our parents' defense, if the doctors are getting it wrong, they are certainly not going to get it right. And my parents didn't believe anything doctor said anyway when I was growing up.
That's true too.
So,
But knowing that would have been, now I know that it is a reminder to me that, this stuff is, I don't know that there's any healing. There's just sort of not further aggravating.
mm,
And, whatever is going on with my immune system, it was imprinted with information from the get-go. So I have always had a problem with soy, and all I have done over the years is to continue to aggravate it. So I can try to move in the opposite direction and let my body calm down, but I don't I don't think that I would ever get to the point where I'm not allergic to soy. But, who's to say? I don't know. So when people get concerned about like becoming allergic to things or more sensitive to things, I don't think that that's what's happening. I mean, I think that you just always are allergic to these things. You just notice a reaction more. Either that, or you give your body a chance to like not be inflamed, and then you're going to just notice the inflammation more. That's it.
In my mind, I think that some of these things are like, if you're thinking about cutting yourself, right, with a knife or something like that, it's a small injury, to your system. And I think to some degree, like one of the things I read, or I've come to understand now about vegetables, is they all have toxins, right? And to what degree it affects you is based on your genetics, your epigenetics, and all of that. But it affects all of us to some degree. I mean, the toxins are there, and if you're super allergic or your immune system is compromised, then it'll always damage you in some way, to some degree. So in terms of whether you're healed or not, I think if you remove the agent that is causing your issues, then you do allow your body to do what it naturally does. Your body wants to be whole and wants to be well.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you reintroduce it, depending on how well you've allowed yourself to rebound,
Mm-hmm.
you may be able to resist, but you're still resisting, right? You're still, trying to overcome, this negative activity that you're introducing yourself to again.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I remember when I first came across Dr. Georgia Eads' website. Her last name is spelled like my first name, and periodically I Google myself to see what comes up. And one time when I did it, her website came up. And so I started reading it, and then I was like, wow, this is crazy talk. Like, what? And but I periodically would go back and look at it some more. And then the first time I heard her give a presentation at, I don't know, maybe it was like the Ancestral Health Symposium or something like that. And like this notion of plants, like, chemically attacking, really like made sense in a way I had never thought about before. And it was like, yeah, that's right. Plants are not here. I mean, I don't know what your faith is, but the Bible like tells us that we are the stewards of, the plants and the animals, and that they are here for our pleasure.
Right.
But it's like, wait a minute, that's actually not true. Life is here for its own. And it defends itself, and and plants have their own way of defending themselves, and mammals have their own way. And it never occurred to me that plants would be that their defenses would actually have an impact on us. And so that idea like really resonated, but I had to hear it over and over and really discuss in finer detail for it to really change my perspective. But then once I did, it was like, yeah, I guess I get it. Hearing some biologists and botanists talk about plants and what they do, it's like, yeah, I get it now. And to understand, like, I smoked for years, and I was a big lover of cigarettes and nicotine, but to learn that nicotine, is an insecticide and part of why we like it and how it affects our body, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, plants are not our friends, and they're great to be used, strategically for health and for medicine, but this is not a fuel.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you asked about the faith. So I'm a Christian, and one of the things that another community that I'm really trying to reach, because we try to, as Christians, what we try to do is pray everything away. And it's like if you are not eating properly, and we like to say, the devil did it, when actually, you just weren't eating properly, or you're not being a steward of your body. And so we can't continually do things that hurt us and then expect, on the other hand, oh God, just remove this, right? So in many ways, I think he gives us clues. And like, I'm a big proponent of fasting, intermittent fasting. Since I started 2.5 years ago, intermittent fasting has been a part of my life just about every single day. So either 16/8 or 18/6, and I still try and make sure that I get in the same amount of calories, just in a smaller window. And that's been totally effective. I think, keto and other ways of eating are mimicking fasting to a degree, because they put you in, ketosis. And the fastest way to get into ketosis is to fast. So if you've never been in ketosis, if you want to get there fast, just don't eat, right? Be there just like that. Right. And I think that fasting has been a religious practice forever, right? Forever. And we've not known really these physiological benefits of it until recently, right? Or maybe a small community of folks who have studied it. But
Mm-hmm.
the mainstream, stuff coming into the mainstream, and I have studied Dr. What is his name? Mercola, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
studied some of his stuff, and so that's one of the uh, most beneficial things that I have done since I started. Beyond the eating, changing my diet. It's just fasting and allowing, and I totally believe in the science of, when you fast, there's autophagy or autophagy that enables you to, regenerate and rebuild and maybe even live longer. The way that how good you feel just kind of is pointing you in that direction. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really drag my feet on fasting because, I love my food. And, to be honest, I still use food emotionally. So even though keto allowed me to lose weight, even if I didn't fix my healing and all of that. So, it is enough, I think, to manage the metabolic stuff using keto, but carnivore brings it to a whole different level. And so, once I got on carnivore, then I really started to kind of deal with the emotional reasons for eating and all the other stuff. But fasting, lays bare all of that, and you really have to attend to, there's no hiding behind it. There isn't, there's no way to go to food for, whatever your emotional reason is. I mean, you can eat emotionally without necessarily gaining weight or anything like that. So now, over the past 6 weeks, I started this fasting group, hashtag fast 72, and have a bunch of people in it. And we just chat and send messages and support each other, and we kind of do a group fast each week for 72 hours. And so doing this over the last 6 weeks, each fast is a little bit different. I'm learning more about myself. I even tried a dry fast, and it was like, it really teaches you a lot about yourself. So I've enjoyed doing this, and I'm definitely going to keep doing it. I'm kind of glad that I did the carnivore and I ate for a while, because I think a lot of us come to this community, or come to this way of eating with a lot of healing that has to be done. And so, for me, when I came, like I said, I was like super anemic due to, well, I have endometriosis, and I'm bleeding a lot. And so getting that under control, getting my blood, built back up, that took time. And, so the eating was necessary to like physically heal, but, I'm healed now. It's time to get into the fasting.
So talk about that a little bit. How you use, was it carnivore that you used to heal, mainly of the endometriosis and things like that? Because one of the things that I found, I have clients as well that I just kind of coach through this process, because people get mixed information or misinformation, and they get it's like a deer in headlights. They're just stuck, so they come to me to help them through that. What I've run into a lot of is getting past the mindset, right? People just stuck in terms of their mindset, or fat, getting past the years of fat's going to kill you, type of mentality and things like that. And even believing that, eating meats, or eating mostly meat, or that can have any type of positive effect on your health. So talk to me about your journey coming, from a place of being anemic to, being, healed from that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd always had issues around, my menstrual cycle and lots of cramps and stuff. And I guess by 44 or so, or 45, I had just finished losing most of my weight, and I really started to have problems with bleeding. I went to the doctors, and it's still very barbaric. I mean, I had a lovely gynecologist who was also a surgeon and was really talented, but basically my options were a hormone, a hysterectomy, removing an ovary, and or an ablation, which is where they take acid and burn out the inside of your uterus. Which,
Wow.
yeah, right. None of these are good options. So I did acupuncture for a while to kind of keep things in control. And the keto kind of, I mean, I think keto does a lot to like manage your hormones and balance your hormones, but it's not a cure-all, and it doesn't solve every problem. So no, I think it probably made things better, but it did not resolve this problem for me. So I had, I think in 2012, I had a cyst that burst, and I almost died. I bled out basically internally, and I had to have this emergency surgery. And then the cyst came back. And so in, let's see, I think it was in February of 2018, I had it removed again. And at that time, they also removed my ovary. I had a lot of scar tissue from the endometriosis, so they did a lot to clean that out as well. But I had been bleeding for like 4 or 5 months straight. And so, so that's why I was so anemic. And then on top of that, I had this asthma that was flaring up. So I didn't have enough red blood cells to bring oxygen around. And then on top of that, I couldn't, inhale enough to get enough air. So I was like constantly, tired. When I had to climb the subway stairs, like, I'd get to the top and be like, oh, I mean, like about to pass out, like that, oxygen deprived. And so when the doctor told me, like, I went to the doctor about something else, and then he called and was like, oh my God, where are you? Like, can you get to an emergency room? And so when he told me that I was super anemic, I was like, oh, this all makes sense now. I get it. And so, that's when I was like, okay, I got to find another solution, because this isn't working. And so, I continue to, to eat this way, but it has not resolved my problems. And I've gone as far as I can with, the medical establishment. We tried the hormones, it didn't work. We removed an ovary, that didn't work. And now my choice is, they're kind of looking at me like, well, you can get a hysterectomy, or you can do the ablation. That's all we got for you. I don't know. And so, I went to an herbalist who was actually able to help me with the bleeding. So the bleeding stopped. And now I have not begun bleeding again. So I don't know, maybe I'm going through menopause now. I'm 48, so it's early, but so I don't have answers there. I don't really know what to say. And I think I'm getting hot flashes now, so I don't know. I may be going through menopause. I don't know, but I can't imagine that that this would be any better if I were high carb. I think all of this would be that much worse if I were, if I were eating that way. So so I don't intend to do anything different like this. But once I started eating more of the red meat and more fat. I think that I was just fat deprived, and you say about women that we have been taught so much to not eat red meat and not eat meat that I do a lot of coaching of women too, and I have people say, "Oh, I just don't like meat," and I'm like, that's not true. You've just been taught that. And every time I go out to a restaurant, I'll go out with a guy and I'll order the steak and he'll get like a chicken salad. And invariably the waiter gives me the chicken salad and the guy the steak.
Wow.
And, yeah. But it's like, but that's expected. I mean, it's like everyone operates and thinks this way. So once I embraced that, red meat is a health food and that it probably is more important for women to eat it than it is men, given all the things that our bodies do. I was just like, I'm embracing this all the way, but I could see what an impact it had. I mean, for a little while, I tried different things to lose weight and to lose a little bit more weight. And I tried a protein sparing modified fast. And that's where you have, a lot of protein and it's very lean. And I did it for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I noticed, but didn't really make the connection, that over that 2 or 3 week period, I became more and more depressed. And, and there were some challenging things going on in my life. So, there was reason to be depressed, but, it wasn't like it came out of nowhere, but my mood became blacker and blacker. And then I think I got short ribs. Somehow I had short ribs, so I decided to cook them and ate them. And like literally within 20 minutes, it was like angels started singing. I mean, there was just joy in my heart. I just felt joyous. And I was like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? And I realized that it was the fat. Like not having it made a huge impact on my mood, and just eating it in that sitting and not rendered fat, because I think that's the problem that a lot of us do in the keto community, is try to get that fat from from butter and from maybe from bacon grease, and not eating like solid pieces of fat or fat trimming like from a steak. Like I think the liquid fat is just not doing it. So eating the short ribs gives you that, that's the only piece of meat that we generally have access to that gives you that 80-20 profile that we're looking for.
Okay.
And
the first time I've heard that one, in that more of a benefit to eat the solid fat from the meat versus the rendered fat. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there's stuff in the fat, we kind of think of fat as this, as just calories and nothing else. But in fact, it carries vitamins, it carries minerals, and it carries energy. And I'm sure it carries stuff that we don't even, think of or account now. And so we benefit from eating it, not just from the energy that it provides and the calories that it provides.
Okay, and so and you think it loses, so rendered beef fat, for instance, you think it loses some of that once it's been rendered?
Yeah, because the liquid part comes out, but when at home, I went and ordered, because I've been trying to get my fat up, and it's hard to do. Like you can't just order a steak somewhere and get that amount of fat that you need. And I finally decided, like, I can't just get a steak and just put some butter on it. So I ordered beef fat trimmings from white oak pastures. They have like this super, ecological, blah, 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 wonderful place. And so I got grass-fed beef trimmings. And so then, it's kind of like, I don't know what to do with this. So I cut it up into squares and started cooking it up, and it makes those cracklings,
Oh,
where
yeah,
the
yeah.
fat renders out, and then you've got this crispy fat thing. So the first time I cooked it, I was like, oh my God, this is so incredibly delicious tasting. So there's a lot in the fat, besides just the fat. I mean, I guess it's connective tissue,
Yep,
collagen,
yep, yep.
whatever. So that stuff is in there too, which I think is beneficial to us and is important in, giving you that satisfaction. And, and as I've been following this, I've been really trying to, listen to my body and get to the point where I feel satisfied. And I don't think I've ever felt satisfied. And I think that what I have been trying to do is unlearn what I've learned for decades of dieting, which is, what women learn is, learn to deal with being hungry, just accept the fact that you're not going to be satisfied, and look for fake things that will, stave off that hunger for a bit. Whether you're eating a rice cake, a stick of celery, all this stuff is to just give you a little bit more time being hungry so you can try to burn off calories. But the problem is you can only, battle hungry for so long before you find yourself face down in a bag of M&Ms. So, I finally was like, fuck it, this is the wrong way. Like, I've got to find another alternative. And so I have really focused on nutrient density and figuring out how to get that satisfaction. And so for me personally, more fat is important for me. And I've definitely heard like Ted Naiman and William Shufelt and Paul Saladino, they, are talk about different amounts of fat that you need in order to, be happy, or to have your brain be happy, or to get the body recomposition you're looking for. So I think for each person, there's a lot of experimentation to figure out what that level is for you.
Right.
So for me, I can see that I need the fat to be higher. And that helps a lot with my brain, and also with my level of satisfaction. It's not helping me for body recomp in that sense. And I think that's where pairing it with the fasting is going to be more helpful than to where, like William Shufelt, that's that guy who's like the Power Ranger.
Yep.
And so, he like has very high protein and keeps the fat low, and that's how he keeps himself shredded. And I think that, and maybe it's a gender thing, maybe for a guy, you can do that. You can get away with doing that, where as a woman, with the way our bodies are with the hormones and whatnot, you just can't get away with doing that. So I don't know. I think that those are all questions that we're hopefully going to answer. But anyway, that was a long rant, but
No,
a lot of that.
That's great. That's great. I got one more question and I'll let you go. Thanks a lot for sharing your story. And that is for, what do you say to women who are interested in doing this or are trying this and aren't losing the weight? So they see everybody, hey, I lost 30 pounds, I lost 50 pounds, and they are just kind of inching along and kind of getting frustrated or discouraged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't lose weight on this way, and a lot of women are not losing weight on carnivore, but so many other things happened that's what kept me motivated and kept me in this space. So I don't think that carnivore is an automatic weight loss tool. You still have to figure out how you're going to have some sort of calorie deficit without being uncomfortable. And that has been the hardest part to figure out. I decided that, in the past, when I was trying to create that calorie deficit, I might smoke cigarettes, I might you know, eat a lot of artificial sweetener. I might do more exercise. I might drink alcohol. I might sleep more. You know, these were all things that I used to try to be hungry longer. And I just, you know, I'm 48 now. I've, you know, lived a very interesting life and gone through some challenging times. And I just don't have it in me anymore to do things that are that hard for my body. And you know, and I quit smoking and drinking and all of that. So I don't have these tools anymore that I might have used in the past. So I can't do daily calorie restriction anymore. And so that's kind of why I looked at the fasting, and you know, which is hard in its own way, but it brings a lot more benefit. But I think that I am seeing some weight loss now, and I think that those two things for me have been really beneficial. So if I, you know, spoke to someone who really wasn't losing the weight, and also was not seeing any other major health benefit and change, then I would say, you know, you might want to pair the fasting together. But usually people are seeing some, you know, great health benefits. So even if the weight loss is not one of them, and, you know, I mean, I got to respect the wisdom of my body. If it's decided, hey, there's all this stuff we're going to fix, and let's just do that first. You know, who am I to say, no, I want to be thin first? I mean, you know, I don't know.
That's a great perspective. Awesome perspective. So, all right. So where can people find you online? Is it Black Carnivore on Instagram?
Yeah, well, on Instagram, I'm at Black Carnivore. And then on YouTube, I'm Healthy Keto Living with A Day. And you know, so that's, and then I have a Slack channel that's a private group for anybody who's interested in being part of this fasting group. I would not have been able to go 72 hours without having this group of people with me and being accountable to a group of people. So so I love the group for that reason, and I'm always welcoming, you know, people who want to join in. So so if people want to send me a direct message on Instagram, I'm happy to send the link so that they can join. And it's a great group. So yeah.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks a
So
lot. I really
you
appreciate it.
recorded this. Are you gonna post this? I think this is actually a pretty awesome conversation.
Oh yeah. I'll post it. I also send the recording to you, so you can use it however you like. Uh,
Okay.
all right.
All
Yeah,
right.
it was an awesome conversation. I learned a lot. You know, it's a really interesting journey we're on. So,
Mhm.
and still a lot to be discovered.
So yeah, we should definitely try to put together some kind of you know, online school or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll keep in touch.
Mhm.
I'm thinking through some things. I really like the idea of a Black Virtual Summit or something like that. I reached out to a couple other folks online who are Black, Keto, or Carnivore. I don't know if you know of. I actually haven't contacted him yet, but I've been following him. Black and Keto, and then there's another.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's another guy. He used to be called Fit Rapper or something, but he changed to his last name, Fit, High Key Fit, I think. So two other guys that are in the space. But I'll
Well,
reach out.
if you would think about my sister's keto diet, she she wrote a book about her experience losing, I think, 100 pounds on keto, and she has a channel now. She was she's a veteran as well, and
Okay.
that's, so she kind of thinks of herself as kind of an older sister who kind of helps other people through this way, and so that's what that's her approach, and she has a big following. She's an awesome, amazing woman,
All right.
um, and yeah, and her book is on Amazon. So I did an Instagram live with her a couple weeks ago, and I still need to post it on my YouTube channel. But yeah, it was a great conversation. So she might be a really good person to incorporate.
Okay. I'll check her out. And yeah, if you run across any others,
Mhm.
just let me know. And
Yeah, no, I'm gathering us. That's why I try to do these Instagram lives and build these relationships.
Sweet, sweet. Yeah, I looked at one of them you did with a guy.
The Keto Apocalypse.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
I was watching that one just before we got on. So,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right,
He's got
cool.
an amazing story too.
There's so much other stuff we can talk about. I know we're done. We're at the top of the hour now, but you did a meat salt water challenge. I wanted to talk about. You've lived in Amsterdam. We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah,
That had to be an interesting experience. So we'll have to do this again.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
All right,
you take care.
all right. You too. Bye.